G'day guys! One of the hardest things about Warhammer 40k is finding a list that suits your specific playstyle. So what I want to do today is I want to show you 4 different Chaos Space Marine lists that are top of the meta, highly competitive, but each one is designed to suit a very specific style of play so that you can decide which one of these suits you better as a player, and that's going to increase your results and tournament standings overall. So with that being said, let's jump straight into the video.
Look for the blood god.
Alrighty guys, so like I said in the intro, one of the main things that I see people make mistakes on is they select an army based on what the internet says is fantastic, or based on, something that's won a recent tournament, and then they try to mirror it and play it, but it doesn't suit their playstyle, and therefore they don't achieve those fantastic results that they're looking for. And this is because every player is going to bring something to them that is unique to them, that indicates the way that they should be playing the game. Perhaps you're a hyper-aggressive player and you really do well when you're going in and you're doing massive amounts of damage, you're not worrying too much about the mission, and you're just blowing things up and scoring your points later. Or maybe you're more of a strategic kind of player where you like to play around, you like disposable elements, you like to secure the missions, and doing damage is a second thought to you. There's a lot of different ways that you can play Warhammer 40k, and a lot of that comes down to your own personality and your own playstyle. So finding a list that suits you is massively important when it comes to securing those tournament results. So let's go through Chaos Space Marines just as an example, but you can apply this to almost any faction. But I have 4 Chaos Space Marine lists that are variations on the popular archetype that are going to tailor specifically to certain playstyle. Alright, the first archetype I call the Rogue Trader. Now this is going to be very, very good for people who like to play that trading game. They like to make sure that when they're sending out their units are cheap, disposable things that are able to trade for points or trade for kills, and they like to be able to consistently trade and win that attrition war by playing that throughout the course of the game. So let's have a look at the list. Alright, we've got in our character slots, we have Abaddon the Despoiler, we have a Chaos Lord, we have a second Chaos Lord, and then we have a Master of Possessions. In battle line, we have a Cultist Mob, another Cultist Mob, and then a third Cultist Mob. Dedicated transports, we have 2 Chaos Rhinos. Then in our other data sheets, we have 2 units of Chosen, 2 Forge Fiends, a unit of 4 Obliterators, a unit of 5 Possessed, the Blue Scribes, and the Changeling in allied units. Alright, so the idea of this list is you're going to have your 2 Chosen units with your Chaos Lords attached. These are relatively cheap units that do massive amounts of damage for their points. They're not going to take out something like a Knight with ease, but they do serious damage for how cheap they are. They're going to sit inside of Rhino, and that Rhino as well is a unit that's going to be able to hold objectives, do actions, screen out the field, those sorts of things, whilst providing a launching pad for those Chosen. You've got Abaddon, who's able to use the Nurgle stratagem Dark Obscuration to prevent himself from being targeted, and he's able to trade for those big targets. He's only 280 points, and he can kill big 500 point Knights with ease. So he's a really good trading piece as well. You've got multiple units of Cultists. Now these guys have sticky objectives, so they're really good in that regard, and also they're able to play that trading game where you'll be able to throw them out, take an objective off your opponent, and then you're going to die next turn, which is the trade, but you're happy with that trade because it's secured you objectives or it's denied your opponent objectives. You've got your lone ops, they're really cheap units that are able to plug holes, do various things, score victory points, trade up into enemy units really, really effectively. And then you've got a couple of big anvil units like your Obliterators and your Forge Fiends that are able to project damage and keep making sure that you're trading with your opponent. So you're able to throw your Cultists out, shoot the thing on that objective with your Forge Fiends, now you control it, and now your opponent has to come and kill those Cultists off of the objective, and chances are the unit that they're going to send to kill your Cultist is going to be significantly more expensive than the Cultist, which means you're going to keep up that trade and you're going to win the attrition war by playing this trading game. So that's how you play the Rogue Trader Chaos Space Marines list. All right, this next list I call the Anvil, and this is for people who want to play an army where you just don't die. It's a really, really tough way of playing the game, and when you play it this way, you're basically able to go, cool, I'm locking in certain results. There's this objective, I want to control it, and I want to know that I'm definitely going to control it. This is the opposite of the Rogue Trader, where instead of trading pieces left and right, you're going, no, I'm going to have my one piece, and you're not going to kill it, and I'm going to consistently delete your unit. So I'm trading one big unit for multiple small units. This is a different way of playing. So let's have a look at the Anvil list. All right, again, we start off with Abaddon the Despoiler, but the other two characters this time, we're taking two Dark Communes. Then in our other data sheets, we have 2 units of Accursed Cultist maxed out. We have a Chaos Terminator squad maxed out at 10 bodies. And then we have 3 Forge Fiends and a single unit of Obliterators with Mark of Nurgle. All right, so you'll notice that this one has significantly less units. However, those units are significantly more durable. Those units of Accursed Cultists with the Dark Commune inside of them can be really, really tough. And you can use Abaddon the Despoiler to give them all a 4-up invulnerable save, which makes them even tougher again. So this is a really, really tough Anvil. And then, of course, you have Abaddon joined into that unit of 10 Terminators who can use the Nurgle stratagem to be untargetable, so people can't shoot you dead. And if they wanted to get into combat with you, well, they just got themselves into combat with Abaddon the Despoiler, which is where you want them. So it creates this really, really hard rock of a list that's very, very hard for your opponent to shift. And then you've got your Forge Fiends, which are surprisingly tough, given that multiple are going to be Mark of Nurgle, so if somebody tries to shoot you, you can make it so that they can't shoot you, and they're going to be holding your backfield, providing that damage downrange. And then, of course, you have your Obliterator unit, which is going to be able to drop in near Abaddon, get full rerolls to hit with that 5+ sustained hits, really, really strong Mark of Nurgle. And then also, if need be, you can use the Dark Obscuration on them. Now, obviously, this list has a lot of units wanting to use that Obscuration strat, so you need to plan around which unit you want to expose, because you know you're going to expose one of them and then use the strat to obscure it next turn, then so on and so forth. But the idea of this list all hinges around the fact that each one of those units is really, really tough. Very, very hard to shift, and that's going to allow you to grind out your opponent, and it's going to allow you to lock in the results that you want. If there's a particular objective that you need to control, you can lock in that you're definitely going to control it. And that's the way you play the Anvil list. All right, the next list is called the Trickster. Now, this is for your meme lords out there, the ones that really like pulling shenanigans and messing with your opponent and doing tricky things and having a unique set of tools that are going to interact with the meta in a different way that your opponent's not likely to have prepared for. So the Trickster is able to use that disparity in knowledge of what an army does in order to get higher results than they would otherwise expect. Because a lot of these units on face value don't look particularly powerful, but when comboed in certain ways, they can make it really difficult for your opponent to do what they want to do. So let's have a look at the Trickster list. All right, so for this one, for characters, we have Abaddon again, we have 2 Chaos Lords, and we have Cypher. Then we have 2 units of 5 Chosen, we have 2 Forge Fiends, we have 2 units of Obliterators. One of them is a 4-man with Mark of Nurgle, the other is a 2-man. Then we have Fate Weaver, the Blue Scribes, and the Changeling. So you could mix some of these Trickster elements in with a more Anvil type of list. I've taken the Rogue Trader style because I think that's more suited to the type of person that's going to want to play this tricky style of list. But the main defining element of this list is that it has both the Fate Weaver and Cypher. And what that does is that gives you 2 sources of a very similar rule that allow you to increase the cost of a stratagem on your opponent's army by 1 CP. And basically this means that you can either take 1 CP that you know your opponent's going to be using regularly and make it cost 2 additional CP, or you can take their 2 best stratagems and make both of them cost 1 additional CP. This is a really, really interesting way of playing the game because you can basically go, there's a lot of armies out there that are going to revolve heavily around 1 or 2 stratagems, and you can make it so that that game plan that they have just doesn't work. For example, if you're playing into another Chaos Space Marine list, you can be like, oh cool, that stratagem you keep using to make Mark of Nurgle so that you can not be shot, that costs you 3 command points now. Nobody has the budget to do that over multiple turns. So you can make it so that they effectively can only use that stratagem once, because every other time they go to use it, it's going to cost them 3 CP. Or you might go, oh, they've got a mixed Chaos Space Marine list where they've got undivided stuff and Nurgle stuff. So I'm going to make the Nurgle Obscuration strat cost an additional CP, and the undivided strat to get full rerolls to hit and wound, I'm going to make that cost 2 CP as well. And now you've put your opponent in a position where they can't do both of them consistently throughout the game. This is a really tricky list, and it's really freaking annoying diverse. So I do highly rate it, and I think it's a lot of fun. It does a little bit less damage than some of the other lists. It's a little bit easier to kill than the other lists, and it has less trading pieces than the other lists. But it does have that really spicy piece of tech. And then the lone operatives as well are an interesting piece of tech for that trickster style list, because you can do things with them that you can't otherwise do. So that's the way the trickster list works. Let's have a look at the next one. All right, this last one is a personal favorite of mine, and I call it the Leaf Blower. And the idea of a Leaf Blower list is that it just packs damage. It's absolutely dripping with damage, and the idea of this list is it just kills your opponent really effectively and really efficiently and very fast. And the idea here is you basically go in, you kill them, and then you worry about scoring your victory points later. And yes, you're going to score lower because you're not focusing on scoring your victory points, but they're going to score lower because they're dead and they can't score victory points. So this is the Leaf Blower archetype. Let's have a look at the list. All right, so we've got Abaddon the Despoiler, we've got Cypher, and we've got Huron Blackheart. Then we've got 3 Forge Fiends, 3 units of 4 Obliterators, and the Changeling. All right, so this is a really, really interesting list. So basically the idea is you're going to have Huron, Abaddon, your lone operatives, your Changeling, and your Cypher deployed on the table. You're going to deploy all of your Forge Fiends in strategic reserves, and then you're going to deploy all of your Obliterators on the table. And then what you can do is you can use Huron's ability to redeploy units to take those Obliterators and redeploy them into Deep Strike. So now all of your Forge Fiends and all of your Obliterators start off the table, and everything that's on the table is untargetable, because it's either a lone op or it's Abaddon who can use the Dark Obscuration strat to be untargetable. So you can start with nothing being able to be targeted by your opponent. They get their first turn, you get your first turn, they get another turn, this is worst case scenario, and then you're able to bring on your entire army and just blap. You do massive amount of damage. You bring on all 3 Forge Fiends, all 3 Obliterator units, and you just kill everything. There's a few different ways that you can play this, of course. Like, for example, you could drip feed. You could bring in, okay, cool, they had a couple of turns to screen me out, so I'm going to bring on 1 unit of Obliterators here, and I'm going to kill these 2 screens, and then next turn I'm going to bring on the whole army. Or you can bring on, a couple of Forge Fiends, depending on your opponent, depending on the situation. Or you can bring it all in at once. Or you can not use the Huron trick to teleport everything into Deep Strike. You don't have to do that. Certain armies are not going to want to do that into, because they're going to fan out and take over the entire board. Like Genestealer Cult's a good example of where you would definitely not want to do that. But the idea of this list ultimately is that you have 3 Forge Fiends and you have 3 units of 4 Obliterators. So you've got maximum damage, and you're just going to shoot them no matter what they do, no matter where they go. You're either going to deploy it all on the table, and you're going to be cool. One turn, you're going to be able to fight indirect with your Obliterators. So if there's anything that's out of line of sight, the Obliterators pick it up, and then the Forge Fiends pick up everything that is in line of sight. And it's a really hard time for your opponent. And these things, all when they're near Abaddon, are getting full reroll to hit. So they're going to do really strong, reliable damage. So that's the idea of the Leaf Blower list. Now, this list obviously lacks the components required to do things like cleanse or deploy teleport homers or investigate signals. Those sorts of cards, if you draw them, you're just going to ignore them. You're just going to be like, nah. And ideally, this is really, really strong into something where you can take fixed objectives. If they've got a lot of characters and a lot of vehicles, and you're like, cool, I'm just going to bring it down and assassinate, even if you're not going to get the max 20, but you're going to get a higher score on them, you just take that and you just blast them. That's the ideal. But if you do have to go tactical because your opponent doesn't give up any good secondaries, so you go, cool, I'm going to take tactical. You draw cleanse, cool, I'm just going to not score. I'm just going to save that until the end of the turn. I'm going to discard it and trade it for a CP, or I'm going to spend a CP at the start of the turn to cycle it out for another one. But the idea here is essentially that you're not going to score very high on your cards, but you're going to blow your opponent to smithereens, and then later in the game, you're going to dominate on primary, and you're going to start scoring cards when you've done the damage, and your lone ops are able to go around and do their actions and that sort of stuff. So it does have the elements to score, but the idea is it's prioritizing damage to go in and do that first and make it so that your opponent doesn't have the pieces required for them to score. So that's the 4 main variations on the standard meta Chaos Space Marine list. And I see a lot of people debating, what's the best way to run Chaos Space Marines? Is it the Accursed Cultists? They're really, really good. Oh, but Abaddon with Terminators is really, really good. Yeah, but then you don't have enough trading pieces and you don't have, blah, 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 blah. And ultimately, I think the way to answer that question is to ask yourself, what is your playstyle? What's the way that you enjoy playing the game? Do you enjoy playing hyper-aggressive, or do you prefer playing that defensive style? Once you figure out what your playstyle is, you will then get a sense for which one of these styles of list will work better for you. And you can also always do hybrids as well. Like you might go, cool, I'm going to take the Terminator and Abaddon brick that we had in the Anvil list. We're going to take that. But then I'm going to mix in some of the damage from the Leaf Blower. And I basically want to have some of my army as an Anvil, and the rest of my army is a Leaf Blower. Or you might go down the same path, but instead of the Leaf Blower stuff, you might go with the trading pieces. You might go, cool, I want multiple units of Chosen and Possessed, so that I can jump out and I can kill things, and I want some Cultists, but I want that Terminator brick with Abaddon. Or you might go, I don't want the Terminator brick with Abaddon, I want the Leaf Blower mixed in with the trading pieces. There's a lot of different ways that you can sort of work this out. These 4 lists that I've provided are the more extreme versions of that archetype based on current top meta units, like the Forge Fiends, the Obliterators, Abaddon, so on and so forth. So feel free to play around with them and mix them up together and find something that's going to suit your playstyle. And the only way to determine what your playstyle actually is to play these games out. Play a game with the Anvil list and see how it feels. Do you feel like you didn't have enough trading pieces? Do you feel like you were too pigeonholed? Play a game with the Leaf Blower list, and do you feel like you didn't have enough pieces to achieve objectives? Play a game with the Rogue Trader and be like, well, it was fun, but I feel like I wasn't able to do enough damage, or I feel like my stuff just died too easily. It all depends on how your playstyle is, and you will find that out by playing multiple games. And my advice would be, when you're playing these practice games, avoid mixing the archetypes at the start. Start by playing a pure trading pieces game, and then play a pure Anvil game, and see how you felt about the two. And then once you've done that, you then start mixing them together and coming up with a flavor that's going to be unique to you and suit you as an individual. So I strongly advise against going straight to the internet and looking at the list that won the last GT and trying to run it yourself. That is not the way that any top players think. Anytime you see somebody who's played an event and won it, they don't have the same list as something that won the previous event. That's not how they work. You've got to find something that suits you specifically. And the only way to do that is to try it on. It's the same as clothes. You don't buy clothes online and then realize they don't fucking fit. You want to try it on first. So that's how I view list building and list writing, is to come up with one that's going to suit you as an individual, and you will get way better results, and you will also enjoy the event way more. You'll get a lot more pride knowing that you wrote the list and that you came up with it, and you'll also enjoy the event a lot more because you'll know that you're playing something that suits your play style. Alrighty guys, enough ranting about that. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for tuning in. As always, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, all that good shit. It helps the YouTube algorithm and it helps a lot on the exposure of this channel. And if you want to show further support, head over to blogforthebloodgod.com and you can join our Patreon, you can join our Discord community, you can pick up some merchandise like this shirt here. We've got custom dice, we've got neoprene objective markers, we've got neoprene gaming mats like the one behind me. We've got tons of really cool stuff on there, all of which goes a long way towards helping me improve the quality of this channel and improve the frequency of the videos that I bring out for you guys. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Walk for the Blood God.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment, he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel